What if I told you that the single most damaging thing you are doing to your liver right now has nothing to do with alcohol, nothing to do with the specific foods on your plate, nothing to do with sugar, or seed oils, or any of the things you might already suspect? What if the most damaging thing you are doing to your liver has almost entirely to do with how often you eat, rather than what you eat? Most people have never heard this. I want to walk you through it carefully today, because once you understand the mechanism, you will look at your own daily eating pattern in a completely different way. I made a video on this channel previously about 6 silent signs that your liver is struggling. The fatigue that sleep does not fix, the unexplained itching, the discomfort under your right rib cage, the brain fog, the bloating after meals, the hormonal shifts. If you watched that video and recognized yourself in some of those signs, you have probably been wondering what is actually causing it. Today I am going to answer that question directly, not with a list of possibilities, but the single most common, most overlooked, most daily habit that is quietly driving liver dysfunction in a significant proportion of adults right now, including, very possibly, you. My name is Dr. Sarah Monroe. I spent 12 years in internal medicine, and one of the most consistent patterns I observed in patients with early fatty liver disease was not a dramatic dietary failure. It was not heavy drinking, though that certainly causes liver damage through its own well-known pathway. It was something far more mundane, far more universal, and far more rarely discussed. It was how frequently they ate throughout the day. And once I started asking patients specifically about their eating patterns, not just what they ate, but how many times a day they put something in their mouth, a pattern emerged that the standard dietary conversation almost never addresses. Let me explain exactly what is happening, because the biology here is precise and the implications are significant. Your liver operates into fundamentally different metabolic states, and it can only be in one of them at a time. The first is a fed state, also called the postprandial state, which begins the moment you eat anything, even a small snack, and lasts for several hours afterward. In the fed state, your liver is busy processing the incoming nutrients. It is taking up glucose and either using it for immediate energy, or converting excess glucose into fat through a process called de novo lipogenesis. It is managing incoming fats. It is responding to the insulin that your pancreas releases in response to the meal. This is normal, necessary, healthy liver function. Every meal requires it. The second state is the fasted state, which begins only after several hours have passed without eating. Once your body has cleared the glucose and insulin from your last meal, and shifted into using stored energy instead. This is a state in which your liver does something the fed state does not allow it to do efficiently. It shifts its priorities toward breaking down stored fat for energy, through a process called fatty acid oxidation, toward autophagy, a cellular cleanup process where damaged components within liver cells are broken down and recycled, and toward genuine metabolic repair. The fasted state is, in a very real sense, your liver's maintenance window. The fed state is when it processes. The fasted state is when it repairs and clears. Here is the problem. The modern eating pattern that has become completely normalized, breakfast, a mid-morning snack, lunch, an afternoon snack, dinner, and often something in the evening, keeps the liver in the fed state for the overwhelming majority of waking hours. If you eat something every 2 to 3 hours from the moment you wake until shortly before you sleep, your liver may spend 16, 17, even 18 hours of every 24 in the fed, processing state, with only a brief window overnight, often disrupted by late snacking, in which it can shift into genuine fat clearing and repair mode. This is a daily habit, not a single damaging food, not an occasional excess, a pattern, repeated every single day. That denies your liver the metabolic rest period it needs to clear the fat. It accumulates during the fed state, and this matters more than most people realize, because of a specific hormonal mechanism that operates throughout each one of those fed state windows. Every time you eat, regardless of how small the snack, your pancreas releases insulin in response to the rise in blood glucose. Insulin's job, among others, is to signal your liver to take up glucose and to promote lipogenesis, the synthesis of new fat, particularly when glucose supply exceeds what your cells need for immediate energy. This is a normal, healthy process when it happens periodically with adequate recovery time between episodes. The problem arises when insulin is elevated nearly continuously, which is precisely what happens when you eat every 2 to 3 hours throughout the day. Your liver receives the lipogenesis signal again and again and again, with almost no extended window in which insulin falls low enough for the opposing process, fat breakdown and clearance, to take over. Research published in the journal Cell Metabolism has demonstrated this mechanism directly. Studies comparing time-restricted eating patterns, where total food intake is compressed into a shorter daily window, typically 8 to 10 hours, with the remaining 14 to 16 hours fasted, found significant reductions in liver fat content. Independent of total calorie intake or weight change, this is a critical detail. The benefit was not simply from eating less. It was from extending the daily fasted window long enough to allow the liver's fat-clearing machinery to actually engage. A study published in Cell Reports Medicine found that even without any change in diet composition or calorie intake, compressing the eating window to 10 hours produced measurable reductions in liver fat over a period of weeks in people with early non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. This connects directly to something I discussed in previous videos on this channel. In my video about bedtime habits and blood sugar, I explained how late-night eating disrupts overnight glucose regulation. In my video about gut health after 40, I explained how late eating disrupts the gut's own internal clock and its overnight repair window. The liver's fed and fasted cycle is a third system operating on this exact same daily rhythm, and the same eating pattern that disrupts your blood sugar, and your gut is simultaneously denying your liver the metabolic rest it needs to clear accumulated fat. I want to be precise about what this means in practice, because the solution here is genuinely one of the simplest interventions available in all of preventive medicine, and it requires no special foods, no supplements, and no calorie counting. The goal is to compress your daily eating into a window of approximately 10 to 12 hours, with the remaining 12 to 14 hours genuinely fasted, meaning no calories, though water, black coffee, and plain tea are generally fine. For most people, this means something as simple as finishing dinner by 7 or 8 in the evening and not eating again until 7 or 8 the following morning. For many people reading their own daily pattern honestly, this single change without altering what they eat at all would represent a significant reduction in the number of hours their liver spends locked in a fed, lipogenic state every single day. I want to emphasize something important here, because this is not the same as extreme fasting protocols, and it does not require skipping meals or going hungry. A 10 to 12 hour eating window is, for most people, simply a matter of not eating immediately upon waking and not eating again right before bed, eliminating the late evening snacking, and the very early morning eating that, for many people, simply reflects habit rather than genuine hunger. The meals themselves, their size, their content, remain entirely up to you and your individual needs. This is purely about timing. The research on why this works specifically for liver fat is increasingly robust. A landmark study published in the journal Hepatology examined patients with confirmed non-alcoholic fatty liver disease and found that an 8-week time-restricted eating intervention, with no other dietary changes, produced significant reductions in liver fat measured by MRI, along with improvements in liver enzyme levels and insulin sensitivity. The mechanism the researchers identified was precisely the one I have described. Extending the daily fasted window allowed sustained activation of fatty acid oxidation and autophagy in liver cells, processes that are actively suppressed during the fed state by elevated insulin. There is a secondary benefit worth mentioning, because it connects to a topic I covered in detail in a previous video about your kidneys. Time-restricted eating has also been shown in multiple studies to improve insulin sensitivity broadly across the body, not just within the liver. Given that insulin resistance is a significant driver of the sodium retention and blood pressure elevation I discussed in my video about blood pressure medication, and given that I discussed the role of blood sugar in kidney health in another video on this channel, compressing your eating window is one of those rare interventions that simultaneously supports multiple organ systems through a single shared mechanism: extended, uninterrupted periods of low insulin that allow each system's own repair processes to engage fully. I want to address something that often comes up when I explain this, because it deserves a direct answer. Is this the same as intermittent fasting? And do you need to do anything extreme to get this benefit? The answer is that this is technically a form of time-restricted eating, which is one category within the broader umbrella of intermittent fasting approaches. But it is the gentlest, most sustainable version of that concept. You are not skipping days of eating. You are not restricting yourself to a narrow 4 or 6 hour window that many people find difficult to maintain long-term. A 10 to 12 hour window is, for the majority of people, simply a matter of eliminating the snacking at the very edges of the day, the food eaten within the first hour of waking out of habit rather than hunger, and the food eaten in the hour or two before bed, often in front of a screen, also largely out of habit. If you are currently eating across a 14, 16, or even 18 hour window each day, which describes a very large proportion of adults in the modern world, particularly those who snack regularly between meals or eat right up until bedtime, simply compressing that window by 3 to 4 hours represents a substantial increase in the time your liver spends in genuine metabolic repair mode every single day, without requiring you to change a single food choice. Let me bring this together clearly. The number one daily habit silently affecting your liver is not a specific food. It is the duration and frequency of your eating window each day. When that window stretches across a majority of your waking hours, your liver spends the overwhelming majority of its time in fat-storing mode and very little time in fat-clearing, repair mode. Over months and years, this contributes directly to the gradual accumulation of liver fat that, as I described in my previous video on liver signs, can progress silently for years before producing any symptom you would notice. The fix is not a diet. It is not a supplement. It is a boundary around when you eat, applied consistently. That gives your liver the metabolic rest period it has been designed to use for repair, and that the modern eating pattern has been quietly denying it. I want to hear from you in the comments. If you tracked your own eating pattern honestly over the last few days, how many hours would your eating window actually span from your first bite to your last? Many people are surprised when they calculate this for the first time. Your answer might be exactly the information someone else reading the comments needs to recognize a pattern in their own life. If this video connected something that the liver signs video left unanswered for you, please share both videos with someone who needs the complete picture. And if you have not yet subscribed to this channel, now is the time. We are building a connected, evidence-based understanding of how your body's systems actually work, and how the smallest, most overlooked daily patterns often matter more than the dramatic interventions everyone focuses on. I am Dr. Sarah Monroe. Your liver has been waiting for a break. Now you know exactly how to give it one.